Hey, welcome. Hey, I'm Denny from Agate Enchantment and Rock Wizardry. That's right, that's our channel. And today we're going to talk about customization of Kershaw Barstow. That's the type of knife it is. And we're going to customize and show you how to customize the knife handles. So there's the factory knife handle, right? And then here is the finished. And I'm going to show you lots of pictures along the way, lots of video along the way, text helpings, all that kind of stuff. So if you want to do a project similar to this, it certainly doesn't have to be this knife, but a speedsafe or assisted knife type customization on the handle, whether it be polished rock or polished wood or something like that, stick around. This could be very valuable. Okay, so here we are outside. We're deciding we're gonna save ourselves just a little bit of time, because on the flat lap, our slant cabber, it's gonna take a long time to take off about half of that, half of this on these slabs. So what we're gonna do is use our saw with a diamond blade here as kind of a grinder. We're not going to cut anything at all. We're just going to use it as a grinder. So stick around, huh? The adventure continues. We got our ear protection on and we're ready to go.
Remember to always wear ear, eye, and breathing protection when working with silicated rocks, because silicosis sucks. Danny's going to be using our 6-inch high-tech diamond slant cabber and a rotary tool with diamond bits today.
Okay, so here we are at the slant cabber, and we got our pieces. We slimmed it down a bit with the saw, help save a little time. Now it's just on the 60 grit right here, 60 grit diamond wheel, and all we're gonna do is take off a bit more, flatten them out really nice.
Here, Denny is gluing the factory handles in order to make sure that the holes can be drilled very precisely. This will help Denny know the exact dimensions of the handle so he won't overshoot the grinding. Notice he's using only small amounts for easier removal of the handles. Notice that he pre-marked the handles to make sure that the fit is correct. Lastly, you see that he has clamped the sodalite to the factory handles.
Okay, so here we go. We've got the second handle. So a couple of things you probably want to keep in mind is that if you're using something like sodalite here, You know, you're looking at about 5.5 to 6.0 on the Mow hardness scale, which is about halfway up. So it's actually pretty soft, and it's easy on the bits too. Something to keep in mind. But you don't want to force it. When you're working it and you're drilling, you don't want to force it. Don't force it. Just let the drill do the work. Keep constant pressure, and then move it off the drill point too while you're in the water to allow it to remove the debris that's being drilled out. Okay, so here we go. Next 3 holes, second handle.
He's only going to do one of these holes because there were 8 of them, and each one took 12 minutes. After all the holes were drilled, he put it in the freezer for 20 minutes and then removed the factory handles.
Okay, so here we are. We've got the handles off. We've smoothed everything out. And now it comes to a bit more of a challenge. So for the mechanism to work on the knife, right here, here's my other one, right? We have to have a spring in there. Okay, so to do that, the spring has to have travel. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to carve out of our handle this area, which I've kind of roughly marked out. And I'll keep this right next to me, and we'll do it's going to be a kind of by hand job. I don't have a router, so we're going to do it by hand with a Dremel. Okay, so stick around, right, as we get going. So for this job, I'm going to start with a bit like this one, and what I'm going to do basically is just kind of start carving out my lines. That's what we're going to do. So we got our Dremel motor, and we got our photometer, and of course with this we need a lot of water, so we're going to just kind of carve in our line.
As you can see in the picture, Denny learned a big lesson here. He made the cavity too big. He had to get creative.
Okay, so after repeated attempts at duplicating Kershaw and their great internal design for the speedsafe, or in the case of another knife, spring assisted, and I've done just about everything I can do to recreate this chamber. And as you can see, it's gotten longer, and I've actually shimmed it with rock. I've put pieces of copper wire in here like that to help with this point right here. Let's see if I can get right in. This point right here is a pivot point. Okay, right up here is where the spring slides up and goes around, comes down, and it comes down and up depending upon the position of the blade that you're in. If you're going to do this like in rock or wood or whatever, you're going to redo these handles. It's really, really important that you start with this chamber right here and get it near exact. See, it's on a bit of an angle, slides over here, comes in, comes up, pivot point, and when it's on the pivot point, it's pushing against right here for your spring assist. All right, so first and foremost, for us to fit this into here, we're gonna have to trim it down some. And so that means flattening it here, you know, shaving it, maybe splitting right here just a little bit, or just trimming it just a little bit, so that it'll actually fit inside here. It also means that we're going to have to customize this wall and pull it out just a little bit more, so we have room. Because one thing I've learned about this knife is that this little chamber controls everything about the mechanism. If it's not right, well, of course you have other parts in the pivot point, but when it comes to where that spring sits, it pretty much has to sit just right there. So first thing we got to do is kind of slim this down so we get some idea of how much room we need inside here to make it fit. Okay, we're starting to get there. I can tell from the inlet where they countersunk this that I got a little bit more to go. So when it was all done and glued in, this is what it looked like. Really challenging, I gotta tell you.
So next, Denny decided to add a little bit more flair to his knife handle and added some larvikite. So as a time saver, Denny trimmed the larvikite on our tile saw to make it closer to the actual dimensions.
Okay, so I've got my pieces kind of shaped. So now I'm just gonna thin them out, take them in, work them around, and make fitment happen. Looking good.
Here, Denny is continuing to work the larvikite to get it to its desired shape. During this process, we actually checked out several different types of rock as to what the inlay was going to be. So in the end, we chose the dendritic agate as the best piece that would not detract from either the larvikite or the sodalite.
And what we're going to do is we're going to run a channel, if you will, down here. Now this is the bottom of one of our handles, and all we're going to do is create a channel for those screws. So we're going to work on that real quick here and see what we can come up with, and we'll know right away if it's not going to work.
So here Denny ran into a couple of really big challenges. The first big challenge was the screws would not allow the larvikite to sit flat. So Denny's workaround was to grind a channel in the underside of the larvikite to accommodate the screw heads. So the next big challenge, he had to shorten the screws to make sure that the barrels actually made contact.
Okay, so basically what we've done here is we have carved out this, as we explained earlier, in the back part of our handles so that as it sits on the handle, kind of like this, right, you're not going to see the screw holes. Well, to do that, of course, we carved this out so the screw heads won't show. But then we ran into another issue, and that the screws basically are too long now in our metal when they go through and to make contact with our little barrel. So they're too long. That presents a real big problem. So here's how we are going to fix that problem. I'm on my high-tech diamond, thank God for it, and this is 100 grit. It also makes a really great sander, and rock, this is designed for rock and agates and stuff like that, is a lot harder than this particular metal right here. So no brainer, we take the nut and we insert it as far as we want it, because I want to take off about 2 millimeters, and then we should be okay for fitment with our barrel and through our steel. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this with, keep this wet so it doesn't get hot. I don't want to do that. I don't want to destroy the nut either. I only have one of them, and Ace only had one of them. So basically all we're going to do is I'm going to take my screwdriver, I'm going to put it in place so the thing doesn't turn on me. I have it now currently backed off at about 3.5 turns from where the head meets the nut. Okay, and then I'm just going to carve it down. So that's what we're going to do next. The whole idea is to flatten the screw shaft down to the nut to our desired length and then remove and repeat with each screw. Pretty close, really close. We don't really want to hit the nut. Okay, about as far as we can go. So I'll give you a look-see here. Okay, so as you can see now, we're just about flush there. Now you're thinking, well, is he gonna be able to get that nut out? Well, the answer to that is yes. One, we're using actually quite a fine thing. Now, if I were using a hacksaw blade on this, you might be right, but I'm not. I'm kind of just gently grinding them down. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to hit it with a little WD-40, just a drop.
Never has been able to get one drop out.
So much for a drop. Never could get a drop out of those. It's always more than you need. And then I'm just going to take it and I'm going to work the nut and work it out. Haha, look at that, success. So now our screw is the right length to go through the handle into the barrel and tighten all the barrels without having to look at them from the top of the handle. Okay, well, we've come kind of a long ways here. We've gotten our stone all trimmed down now for our handles. We've got our little inlay kind of set up. Got our handles ready. Got our mechanism so that it kind of works over here. And we're ready to go. Now this is going to be kind of a tricky, I've never done anything like this, and I'm not going to pretend I have, nor, as far as I know, anybody else for that matter. But probably so. So we got several things going on here. First off, we're going to be gluing it with Hackstol. This is jewelry grade glue. It's actually an epoxy resin. Good stuff. From what we understand, I have never used it before. But we also need to lubricate moving parts as we put them together. In addition to that, we also have to take our screws and use Loctite. So we got our hands full for this one. So here's what we're going to do. First thing we're going to do is we're going to build the most important part of this knife, which is this right here. That's this spring, this housing. This is a challenging process and it calls for patience. Take your time and assemble slowly.
So when the handles are bonded and the pivot points are greased, it should look like this.
So we've come a long ways with our Kershaw Barstow here. We've gone through it being sodalite, complete, the whole handle, which wasn't bad. I just didn't like the screw holes. So then I decided, well, you know, I'll add the larvikite. That was cool. But it really needed something else to define between the two handles. So I added these inlays. And yeah, they're not perfect, but they look pretty good. And when it's done, it'll look even better. A lot better. So it's now been drying for about, I think we're on the 6th day of drying with the Hextall. I've also filled in all the little gaps with Hextall all the way around so that when we grind these 3 pieces down and together, they should look like a seamless piece. It should look pretty darn good. So that's our plan now. Is I'm going to take the Dremel tool and I'm just going to use it a tad bit like a grinder and take off the extra from here, and then we're going to get back on the high-tech diamond here and we're going to round off these ends and bring them right up to where the metal is for our knife. And if you notice, and this is important, I have completely surrounded the pivot mechanism with painter's tape. Totally. So that we don't get any water and grit in there. We don't want that mixing. That would be bad. Now, our white grease would definitely not like that. And the mechanism works great. It flips open like it should. It's looking pretty good. So we're going to get started and we're going to jump in. So I'm going to keep my hand pretty steady here. And I'm just going to get this thing wet. And we're going to get going.
So with the high-tech diamond, you can actually remove the shield so you can work a bigger piece. However, make sure that you have some sort of shield around your machine. Otherwise, you're going to have about a 3-hour mess to clean up.
Okay, we're going to go on to 240 now. 240. Smooth it up. It's looking pretty good. All the lines are meeting up. Everything's rounded off equally. We're going to leave that sharp back there just because it looks cool and sharp. Okay, well, we've had a few stops and starts and go backs here. started with a brand new disc, and duh, I should know it by now, that the brand new disc, which was a 600, created more scratches than the old 350 or 325 that I had. So I had to actually go back a disc. Didn't want to bore you with those details. Anyways, we're now up to 1200, and I worked the disc in first with another rock, and it's looking pretty good. Looking darn good. Got a little bit more work to do here, but it's really starting to shape up now. Okay. It's a little tricky working with a big long thing on a 6-inch slant cap. But if you're creative and don't mind cleaning up a mess afterwards, you can do it. So we've got to just kind of leave it there, and all we're doing is we're just pulling the two sides together to make them pretty even. That's all we're doing. Always use that paper towel, it'll help. Now we're getting somewhere. Okay, well, we are officially on 3,000. One of the things you definitely want to look for is a consistency among your finish. And for any kind of scratches, inconsistencies in the finish, because each grit will give you a consistent finish. All right. And at this stage of the game, I will also mention that it's a good idea to continually clean your disc, because if you get bits from 1200 on here, it could scratch your 3000 finish. It's always a good idea to run a little cleaner on your disc, and you can tell almost by the sound if it's clean or not, and where it's grabbing. And so we're going to do a little twist here. That, rub them sides in. Okay, it's time for the fun to begin. We're on 14K now. She's looking good. A little bit of polish and some buffing, and we're going to start seeing some real color and flash come out of our stones. All mated together just right. Lots of fun. Alright, well, we've taken a little bit of the tape off, and we've rubbed a little bit of the 50K polish into it, just with my finger and on the wheel. And we'll just go ahead and polish her up with 50K.
Now this is the cleanup phase, and he's using the dental tool with a fluffy little brush, and he's shining up the metal and making it all look real pretty. And then he's got it all, the stone all masked off so he doesn't ruin that finish. And then he's also going to be polishing up the barrels and making them look spectacular.
Well, it's been a long, I don't know, a month, I think, on this awesome Kershaw knife, which started out like this one.
Hey, thanks for watching.
But we did a little improvement and completely changed the handles to larvikite. Then you got dendritic agate, and then sodalite stone, right? It's been quite the job, and as you'll see or have seen on the video, it's been a learning experience. Never done one before, but I'm very happy with how it came out. It's shiny, the mechanism works just fine. It's pretty beautiful. I'm digging it. I hope you are too. I hope you learned something. Hey, be sure and like and subscribe to the channel if you have learned something, or if you just like it. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate it.